Welcome back to Farang Footprints, where real stories unfold far away from home, under foreign skies, in cities that do not wait for you to be ready. Today's story is told by Emely Carter, a woman from England who believed working online meant freedom, that independence could be measured in followers, and that control was the same as security. She built a life from behind a screen. She answered to no one. She depended on nothing, or so she thought, until a move to Bangkok introduced her to a man who lived by discipline, earned his strength the hard way, and needed no one to survive. What began on equal ground slowly tilted under the weight of misunderstanding, pride, and a moment neither of them planned. This is not a story about money. It is a story about balance, trust, and how easily even strong foundations can crack, and about how fate sometimes waits quietly, disguised as an ordinary decision until you stop looking for miracles. This is Emily's story, told in her own words.
I used to tell people I was lucky. I worked online, from home, on my own terms. No alarm clock, no office, no one telling me when to start or stop. From the outside, my life looked flexible, modern, free. I was living in a small apartment in Manchester, not far from the city center. Nothing fancy. Neutral walls, big window, enough space for a bed, a desk, and the version of myself I showed to the world. My work fit neatly into that space. A camera, a ring light, a laptop that rarely shut down. I created content for brands, shared outfits, routines, thoughts about confidence and independence. People followed me because I seemed calm, grounded, in control. I talked about building your own life, about not needing permission, and in many ways, it was true. I paid my own bills. I chose my own hours. I answered to no boss. But independence has a quiet side no one posts about. Days blended into each other. Morning coffee turned into afternoon editing, which turned into late-night scrolling. Some days, I realized the only voice I had heard was my own. Rehearsed, filtered, recorded. When the camera was on, I was present. When it was off, I faded. Friends drifted slowly, not because of drama, but because I was always busy or just about to upload something. Relationships never really started. Intimacy did not fit well into a schedule built around algorithms and engagement rates. I told myself I did not need more. That wanting more was ungrateful. But the truth is, comfort can be dangerous. It convinces you that stillness is stability. One evening, after finishing a sponsored post, I closed my laptop and stared at my reflection in the dark screen. I looked exactly like someone who had everything under control, and exactly like someone who had not moved in years. Thailand came back into my mind without warning. Not the beaches, not the Instagram version. Bangkok. The noise, the heat, the chaos that somehow made sense once you stopped fighting it. I remembered how anonymous I had felt there, and how alive that anonymity had been. No one cared what I did for a living. No one asked for content. No one expected anything from me. That memory stayed with me for weeks, until one night, I found myself searching flights without fully admitting why. I told myself it was temporary, a change of scenery, a way to reset. But deep down, I knew better. I was not looking for a break. I was looking for friction, for something that pushed back. I booked the ticket 2 days later, one way. I did not announce it right away, not to my followers, not even to my parents. The decision felt fragile, like it needed time to exist before being spoken out loud. When I finally told my mom, she went quiet for a moment. "Bangkok?" she asked. "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." She did not argue. She just said, "Be careful, Emily." I promised I would. I just did not know yet that being careful would not be enough, and that the life waiting for me in Bangkok would test every idea I had about strength, balance, and what it really means to stand on your own 2 feet. Bangkok did not welcome me. It did not slow down when I arrived. It did not care that I was tired, nervous, or carrying my life in one suitcase. It simply existed, loudly, relentlessly, unapologetically. The heat hit me the moment I stepped outside the airport, not like warmth, but like pressure. as if the air itself had weight. I remember standing there for a second too long, just breathing, feeling my clothes cling to my skin. So this is it, I thought. My apartment was in a modern building near Sukhumvit. High floor, concrete, glass, air conditioning, that worked overtime. It looked good on camera, clean lines, neutral colors, a city view that felt impressive from a distance. But at night, the city did not sleep. It hummed, buzzed, moved. Sirens, motorbikes, voices. Somewhere below, music that never quite reached a melody. The first days passed in a strange blur. I explored during the mornings, worked during the afternoons, edited at night. Cafes became my anchor points. Places with strong coffee and Wi-Fi fast enough to keep my old life intact. I filmed content, nothing had changed. New background, same smile. My followers loved it. Living the dream. So jealous. Bangkok looks amazing. I posted sunsets and street food. What I did not post was how lonely it felt to sit alone in crowded places. How often I caught myself reaching for my phone just to feel connected to someone. Independence looks different when no one knows your name. I tried to build routines. Morning walks, evening swims, small rituals to give the day's structure. But the city resisted being tamed. Every plan collided with noise, heat, unpredictability. That was when I found the gym. It was not a decision born from ambition. It was survival. I needed somewhere to put up the restless energy that built up in my chest every evening. Somewhere real, physical. The gym was tucked between a convenience store and a motorbike repair shop. No glossy sign, just a faded banner and the sound of fists hitting pads. Inside, the air was thick. Sweat, rubber mats, metal. The rhythm of training echoed through the room, sharp, controlled, deliberate. Muay Thai. I stood near the entrance, suddenly aware of how foreign I looked. How soft, how out of place. No one stared. No one asked questions. A trainer nodded once, pointed to a bench, handed me a towel. That was it. The training was brutal. My lungs burned. My legs shook. But for the first time in months, my thoughts went quiet. There was no room for overthinking, and someone held pads in front of you and expected you to hit them properly. No space for self-doubt when your body demanded all your attention. I came back the next day, and the day after. That was when I started noticing him. He did not train like the others. No showing off. No unnecessary movement. Every phone he did had purpose. Controlled power. Calm focus. He was not a trainer shouting instructions. He was not a tourist testing himself. He belonged there. I did not know his name. I did not need to. Not yet. At that point, he was just another part of the gym. Like the sound of gloves hitting pads, or the quiet understanding that Bangkok was slowly pulling me out of my own head. I realized then that this quiet man in the corner would soon challenge the very balance I thought I had finally found. I noticed him long before we ever spoke, not because he was loud or dominant, but because he was not. In a room full of exertion and ego, he moved with restraint. Every strike was measured, every pause intentional. He trained like someone who knew exactly what his body could do and had nothing to prove. I found myself watching him between rounds, pretending to stretch while my eyes drifted in his direction. He was Thai, mid-30s, maybe, lean, but solid in a way that comes from years of repetition rather than aesthetics. His face carried the kind of calm you do not learn. You earn it. When he finally spoke to me, it was not a pickup line. "You are improving," he said, handing me my gloves after a session. That was it. No smile that lingered too long. No curiosity, disguised as politeness. Just an observation. "Thanks," I replied, slightly surprised. "I am trying not to die." He smiled. Then, brief, honest. "Everyone tries," he said. "Few listen to their body." I learned his name that day, Niran. He was not a trainer at the gym. He trained there, fought professionally when there was a match worth taking. In between, he lived simply. No sponsors, no flashy lifestyle. He paid his own way. That detail mattered to me more than I realized at the time. Our conversations stayed practical. Training, recovery, heat, the city. He never asked what I did for a living, and I did not rush to explain. That alone felt like relief. I was used to people reacting to my work with either fascination or judgment. Niran did neither. When it eventually came up, days later, he simply nodded. "So you work online," he said. "Yes. That is good," he replied. "Means you can be anywhere." There was no envy in his voice. No assumption that my life was easier than his. Just acceptance. We started training at similar times. Sometimes stretching next to each other. Sometimes sharing water in silence. The connection, if it existed, grew without pressure. I noticed how disciplined his life was. He arrived on time, left on time, ate the same meals, slept early. There was structure in every theory. He did. And yet, he never tried to control mine. When he invited me for food for the first time, it was casual. "After training," he said. "You are welcome to join." We sat on plastic chairs by the street, sweating over bowls of noodles while motorbikes passed inches away. No wine, no flirting, just conversation that flowed easily. He told me about growing up in Isan, about fighting since he was a teenager, about injuries that taught him patience more than pain. I told him about England, about building something alone, about the strange emptiness of working without boundaries. He listened, really listened, not to respond, but to understand. What surprised me most was how equal it felt. He did not need me. I did not need him. And yet, we kept choosing to sit next to each other. Bangkok faded into the background when we talked. Not because it disappeared, but because we both stood firmly within it. I remember thinking one evening, walking back to my apartment, this is what balance feels like. I did not know then how fragile balance can be, or how easily a single moment, a single misunderstanding, can tilt even the most solid ground. What surprised me most was not how quickly Niran became part of my life. It was how naturally it happened. There was no moment where we defined anything. No conversation about what this was or where it was going. We simply started moving in the same rhythm. Training in the mornings, food after, occasional evenings walking through the city, when the heat softened and Bangkok felt almost gentle. He never stayed over without asking, never assumed, never crossed a line that had not been invited. That respect made closeness feel safe. My work continued as usual. I filmed content, edited videos, held meetings across time zones. Niran watched sometimes, curious but never intrusive. "People see you through a screen," he said once. "They think they know you." I nodded. "They see what I let them see. That takes discipline too," he replied. Coming from him, it felt like a compliment. He had his own routine, his own income. Some weeks he fought. Some weeks he trained others quietly, without calling himself a coach. He paid for his meals, his rent, his life, without making a statement out of it. That mattered to me more than romance. I had seen too many stories in Bangkok. Women who arrived with freedom and slowly became responsibility. Men who confused affection with dependence. Niran never did. Still, the difference between our worlds was there, subtle, but present. My life existed partly online. His existed almost entirely offline. I planned weeks ahead. He planned days. I talked about growth. He lived it. The tension did not come from money. It came from perception. One evening, while we were eating, he asked casually, "Do you ever get tired of explaining yourself?" I frowned. "To who?" "To people who think they know your life," he said. I laughed. "Constantly." He nodded, then added, "Sometimes people think you are rich because you smile on a screen." The comment was neutral, not accusing, but it landed heavier than he intended. I realized in that moment that despite everything, despite how equal it felt, there were assumptions hovering just below the surface. Not spoken, not confirmed. And I became aware of my own. I had assumed his discipline meant simplicity. He might have assumed my freedom meant excess. Neither of us had asked. The balance still held, but I could feel it shift slightly, like a weight redistributed. Nothing broke that night. Nothing dramatic happened. But something small and invisible entered the space between us. Uncertainty. And in relationships built on quiet understanding, uncertainty is loud. I did not know then that a coincidence, nothing more than chance, would soon force everything we had not said into the open, and that we would have to decide, very clearly, whether this was a connection worth protecting. The strange thing about trust is that it rarely breaks in a loud moment. It slips. The night it happened was ordinary. No argument, no raised voices, just a small decision that unfolded the wrong way. Niran had a fight coming up. Not a big one, but important enough. He trained harder than usual, ate cleaner, slept earlier. I respected that and gave him space. That evening, I stayed home to work. A brand deadline. A video that had to go out before midnight UK time. I ordered food, opened my laptop, and let the hours blur together. My phone buzzed around 10. A message from a friend I had made in Bangkok. Another expat woman. "Are you at the gym tonight?" I replied no. She sent a photo. It was Niran. He stood near the entrance of the gym, talking to a man I did not recognize. The man's hand rested on Niran's shoulder. Between them, on a small table, lay a thick envelope. The caption read, "Saw this. Thought it was weird." My stomach tightened. I stared at the image longer than I should have. The envelope, the posture, the timing. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. But I did what everyone does. When they are alone with doubt, I filled the silence with assumptions. When Niran came over later, I did not confront him. I smiled, asked about training, listened while my thoughts raced ahead of his words. "Everything okay?" he asked eventually. "Yes," I said too quickly. The lie sat between us. Over the next days, the distance grew. Not dramatic, just colder. He noticed. Of course he did. Discipline makes you observant. Finally, he asked, "Did I do something wrong?" I hesitated, then showed him the photo. He looked at it for a long time. "That is my cousin," he said calmly. "He runs promotions for fights. He paid part of my purse early." "Why did not you tell me?" I asked. He met my eyes. "You did not ask?" The answer was honest. Too honest. I realized then that I had assumed transparency without ever agreeing on it, that I had expected clarity without offering trust. "And the envelope?" I pressed. "Cash," he said. "That is how it works." I nodded, embarrassed by my own suspicion, but something still lingered. "You think I depend on you?" he asked quietly. The question hit harder than any accusation. "No," I said quickly. "Of course not." But my hesitation betrayed me. He leaned back, crossed his arms. Not defensive, guarded. "I fought long before I met you," he said. "And I will fight if you leave." The words were not angry. They were factual. That hurt more than if he had shouted. We sat in silence, two independent lives suddenly aware of the thin line between autonomy and distance. That night, he did not stay. And for the first time since I arrived in Bangkok, I felt like the city had gone quiet, not because it had changed, but because I had misread the rhythm. I did not sleep much that night, not because I was angry, but because I was uncomfortable with myself. Suspicion is easy when you are used to control, and I was. My entire life ran on visibility, and numbers, metrics, feedback. If something was not clear, I adjusted it. Niran's life did not work that way. By morning, I knew that if I stayed silent, I would lose something worth protecting, not because he would leave, but because I would close. I went to the gym earlier than usual. He was already there, wrapping his hands, focused, calm. I waited until he finished. "I'm sorry," I said. No explanation, no defense. He looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "For what?" he asked. "For assuming. For expecting answers I never asked for." He sat down, resting his elbows on his knees. "You live in a world where everything is visible," he said. "I do not." "I know," I replied. "And I do not want to turn you into content or clarity." That made him smile slightly. "I do not need you to understand everything," he said. "I need you to trust what you do not." The words stayed with me. We talked for a long time. About boundaries. About money. Openly. Without shame. About how easily imbalance can sneak in, even when both people are strong. "I do not want to be taken care of," he said. And I do not want to take care of someone who does not need me, I replied. The honesty felt grounding. No promises were made that morning. No dramatic declarations. Just a shared agreement. To ask before assuming, to speak before retreating. That evening, we walked through the city like we always did. Nothing had changed, and everything had. The balance was back. Not because it was restored, but because it had been rebuilt with intention. And sometimes, that makes it stronger than before. Life in Bangkok began to settle into a rhythm I had not expected. Mornings were for training, afternoons for work, evenings for wandering through streets lined with neon signs, vendors, and the constant hum of scooters. I still filmed content. Neurons still trained. But our lives felt separate, yet aligned. No one demanded attention. No one needed proof. Just presence. One evening, after training, we stopped at a small 7-Eleven. The kind of store you only notice because of the bright lights and the endless snacks that somehow never look familiar. I was grabbing water. Niran was choosing something for himself. Energy drinks, instant noodles, small treats for later. On impulse, I picked up a lottery ticket. You are actually buying one? He asked, raising an eyebrow. Why not? I said. It is just a number. Something random. He paused, examined the ticket, then smiled slightly. Okay, one for you, one for me. We laughed at the absurdity. To people who did not need luck, buying a ticket on a whim. A simple, inconsequential act. We did not talk about it again that night. We walked back, bags in hand, sharing the sticky Bangkok air, talking about training, food, small things. The lottery ticket sat quietly in my purse, forgotten almost immediately. That was the beauty of it. No expectation, no dream, just the chance, unnoticed, in the background. Sometimes, life's smallest choices carry the heaviest weight, though you cannot see it at the moment. And in that quiet, ordinary evening, I felt the kind of happiness that did not need an occasion. Just being there, together, in a city that was messy, overwhelming, and alive. We did not need more. And yet, somehow, life had already begun preparing to give us something we could not plan. I had not thought about the lottery ticket for days. It sat at the bottom of my purse, forgotten amid receipts, a charger, and a few stray coins. Niran was sprawled on the sofa, stretching after training. I was sipping tea, editing a video for a client back in England. The air conditioner hummed quietly, and the Bangkok street outside buzzed with the usual energy. Hey, I said suddenly, remember this? I pulled the ticket out, half laughing. I forgot it even existed. He leaned forward, eyes curious but calm. Let us check it, he said. We turned on the small TV in the corner of the apartment. A lottery drawing was playing live. I did not expect much, just numbers, some suspenseful music, and people cheering on the screen. And then it happened. The first number matched. The second number matched. I laughed nervously. No way. The third, fourth, fifth, all of them. We froze. 10 million Thai baht. 10 million. I stared at him. He stared at me. Neither of us said anything at first. Not disbelief. Not joy. Just quiet. It was not about the money. Not really. It was about the absurdity of life. How two people, living quietly in Bangkok, could make a casual decision, a joke, almost, and have the world flip upside down overnight. Niran reached over and took my hand. Not in a gesture of control, not in triumph, just connection. We did this together, he said softly. And we laughed. Nervous, stunned, incredulous. I realized in that moment that the lottery did not change the balance between us. It did not make one of us dependent on the other. If anything, it proved something we had already learned. That partnership is not about wealth. It is not about security or control. It is about trust, respect, and the willingness to navigate surprises together. We spent the night making quiet plans. Not lavish dreams, not reckless purchases. Just possibilities. For travel, for experiences, for security, for building something quietly permanent in a city that had already changed both of us. And even as I held the ticket in my hand, feeling the strange weight of 10 million baht, I understood one thing clearly. Life will hand you luck. It will hand you surprises, but it will never replace the work, the care, and the balance you have built yourself. And in that, we had everything we needed. The days after the draw felt surreal. Bangkok was still loud, the streets still chaotic, the heat still relentless. Everything looked the same, but nothing felt quite normal. We kept living, flirting, walking, eating noodles on plastic chairs. Everything ordinary, yet somehow charged with possibility. The lottery did not change our routines. Niran still went to the gym at dawn. I still filmed, edited, posted, and answered messages. But there was a quiet reassurance in knowing that, together, we had the freedom to choose how to live. We talked about what to do with the money, not in terms of extravagance, but in terms of options. A small apartment upgrade? Maybe. Saving for the future? Absolutely. Investing in experiences we would not otherwise afford? Definitely. We laughed at the absurdity of it. Two people who had just learned a lesson about trust and balance, suddenly holding a ticket that could solve almost any financial problem. But we agreed, the money would not define us. We would not let it. Instead, we continued the rhythms that had brought us here. We trained together, sometimes sparring, sometimes just stretching side by side. We explored Bangkok as hidden streets, night markets, and quiet temples. We cooked meals together in our small kitchen, laughing over spills and burnt noodles. We planned trips for the first time in years, but trips that mattered, not trips for likes or validation. I realized something. The jackpot was less about wealth and about choice. And having choice did not change the lessons we would already learned. Being together on equal terms, respecting independence, honoring boundaries, speaking openly, that was priceless. We were free to grow, to explore, to love, without fear, without expectation, without compromise of our integrity. And somewhere between the chaos of Bangkok streets and the quiet of our apartment, I felt the kind of contentment I had not thought possible. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was simple, steady, enduring. We had found balance, together, and for the first time in a long time, I knew that happiness was not about having everything. It was about having exactly what you needed, with the person who had chosen the same.
Bangkok did not change Emely. It did not make her richer, wiser, or stronger. It simply reminded her of something she had long forgotten. Freedom is not measured in money, followers, or control. It is measured in the choices one makes, the trust one offers, and the courage to remain, even when uncertainty looms. Through discipline, patience, and quiet observation, Emely and Niran learned that strength is calm, independence is shared, and love does not need to dominate to matter. The lottery was merely a number. A real jackpot was the understanding they had built together, the respect, the balance, the small acts of generosity, including their monthly support for local animal shelters, and the dogs who never asked for anything. Life, as it turns out, is rarely about expecting miracles. It is about recognizing them quietly and choosing to stay. For those who want to share their thoughts, stories, or just say hello, we can be reached at farangfootprints@gmail.com. Farang Footprints reminds us once again, sometimes the most extraordinary things happen silently when life is lived with attention, patience, and an open heart.